Squirrel Stapler is a game made by developer David Szymanski, who you might know for games such as Iron Lung or Dusk. If you don't know, the premise of the game is that, as he puts it, you hunt squirrels, staple them to a corpse, and meet God. On the surface, the game may just look like some low-budget meme game, with parts of it looking like some game you made in year 12, or some low-budget edutainment game. However, beyond the surface, it goes much deeper than that. Let's get into it. You start the game in a shack in the woods. To the right of you is a rotting skinned corpse attached to the wall, surrounded by blood and flies. You say, "We came here to get away from it all, so that our love might blossom. But our love has not blossomed. Look at my beloved. The flies have made her ugly and rotten. I wish she were beautiful, like the squirrels of the wood. And so, I will cover her in the squirrels of the wood." Apparently this corpse on your wall is your wife. Your beloved. Immediately after starting the game, you can already tell something is off. Going through the shack, you'll notice it's pretty empty, with the dining room being just a table, chairs, and plates along with the shelf for those plates. You'll also notice the room to the right of the bedroom, which has blood on the floor in the shape of some sort of summoning circle with a note. Going up to the note on the floor, it reads, "Saith the goat of the wood, thou shalt not staple squirrels." I have an idea of who this goat of the wood could be, but I'll come back to that later. Before going out, you'll see writing on the wall with what seems like blood, saying, "In 5 days, God is coming." Going outside for day 1, the objective for today is to collect 5 squirrels. You go around the environment trying to be as quiet as possible, listening for the sounds of a squirrel. Once you've found a squirrel, you aim and shoot, and you collect it. Basically, you repeat that until you have enough squirrels. If you check the map, there are 2 points of interest. There are 2 question marks, and there are also little red dots scattered around. The dots represent the items, and they're always in the same locations every day. There's the ammo and health stations, which, replenish your ammo and health. They're also infinite, so you won't have to worry about how often you use them. There's also the energy drinks that make you run at 2 times speed for 45 seconds, which can make it easier to traverse to where you want to go, since walking there might take a while. Going to this question mark will take you to a radio tower with a note inside. This is the story about the artist, named The Lady. Let's read part 1. Once there was a lonely artist who lived by himself in the woods. Desiring to ease his loneliness, he saved his meager earnings and purchased a fine paintbrush crafted from the hair of a beautiful woman. The artist loved this paintbrush so much that he used it to paint the woman who had given her hair for its creation, as he imagined she must look. He was then informed that due to a terrible mix-up, the hair had actually come from a wild boar. Come back tomorrow for part 2. I'll get more into these as we get into the story. While going through the world, you may also notice a strange Stonehenge-looking thing that isn't marked on the map. Inside, there are white particles and an energy drink, and going into it, you start taking damage. To me, this looks like some sort of summoning circle. However, I'm not sure what it could be summoning. We've seen a summoning circle before back in the shack, so they could either be linked, or they could be opposites. I'm not exactly sure. This might be a wild guess, but it could also be a way to put you out of your misery, possibly placed by God. Something else I want to point out are the particles. When playing, the game seems to use them to get your attention. We see white particles for the notes, red for the health pickups, yellow for the ammo pickups, green for the signs to go in and out, and pink particles for the energy drinks and also the dead squirrels. This could also support the idea of that Stonehenge being a way to put you out of your misery, as God could be using those particles as a way to grab your attention in order for you to be aware of it and or use it. Going to the question mark at the top left corner of the map, you'll come across what looks like some bunker. The door to the bunker seems to have some sort of dark hole, which could possibly be for communication, air, supplies, or some sort of peephole, which would make sense given the hole could potentially resemble an eye. To the side of the bunker, we get a note named Report 1. Reading the report, it says, "Nothing of note to report, some marginal abnormalities and readings that went away once I recalibrated, some odd noises during the night, probably squirrels. Overall, everything is pretty quiet. Come back tomorrow for another report. Once you've gotten all your squirrels, it's time to go home." Hey, honey. Looking beautiful as ever. Alright, good night. You wake up for day 2. Going back to the note with the summoning circle, the note is changed. Reading it, it says, "For the bushy tail is righteous in the All-Mother's sight, and the chattering voice divine. Should that which is divine be added to which is not divine? By no means." Going back outside, you not only need to find 5 squirrels, but now a large squirrel. You find the regular squirrels the same way, however you locate the big squirrel by imitating its call. Once you hear it call back, you follow the sound and track it down to shoot and collect it. There's another new type of squirrel introduced here too, however they're the ones you want to avoid. Squirrel ghosts, or ghost squirrels, can be seen wandering around. If they see you, they'll make an audible roar and chase towards you. These could possibly be the ghosts of the squirrels you already killed, looking for revenge. If they catch up to you, they only deal a slight amount of damage, so you won't have to worry about them too much. Going back to the radio tower to read The Lady Part 2, it says, "The artist was inconsolable, and spent his days weeping and taking his portrait on long walks in the rain. On one of these walks he encountered an old woman who said, 'Ah, young man, I can see the reason for your despair. Come with me.' For a few pennies," she said, "his treasured painting would be brought to life." The artist was overjoyed, and the spell was cast. Only then did he remember that he had only painted the woman from the waist up. Return tomorrow for part 3. Something else I didn't mention is the Shady Shack. It can be found around the top of the map, but it's not marked on the map. Next to it is a note saying every day you can commit sins at the Shady Shack to boost your score. Going into the Shady Shack, you'll get hit with a splash screen that lasts a few seconds. The image seems to be two squirrels mirrored together with text saying, "committing sins." The sounds seem to be some sort of old broken printer, or a dot matrix printer, mixed with some strange groaning as well as some other sound that could be the sound of squishing, or something splattering. It then abruptly cuts you back, and you've gained more points. You can only enter the Shady Shack once a day. Going back to the bunker, the second report says, "Small abnormal readings still occurring with odd regularity. Recalibrating always fixes them, but they come back the next day. I also keep finding dead squirrels outside the door. Looks like maybe an animal is leaving them, but I'm noting it as per my instructions." It seems whoever's in this bunker is doing an investigation of something, seeing how they're receiving readings, and have been given instructions. Whatever they're investigating can't be good, as they keep finding dead squirrels and having abnormal readings. Once you have enough squirrels, you can come home. When you go back to your wife, you'll find a note right beside her, which says, "I don't want squirrels, I want skin. Give me back my skin, or give me yours instead." The fact that she says, "give me back my skin," can imply that the protagonist did it themselves, rather than the flies that they blame it on. I also don't believe flies could make someone headless, armless, and also legless. Ignoring what the note says, you staple the squirrels to your wife and go to bed. Day 3, waking up in the shack, the note left by your wife is gone. However, the note with the summoning circle has again changed. Reading it, it says, "Rather like the righteous squirrel, the wise man stores his nuts for the proper time, but the faithless man has no nuts to store." I want to mention the lighting in the shack. There's always this darkness that unfolds before you as you walk through it, which can give the shack a sense of unease and uncomfort, in case the blood and skinned corpse wasn't enough. In fact, a lot of the game feels weird. I mean, obviously the game is weird, but also in the way you perceive things. When playing the game, you may notice that the trees seem to turn into billboards when you're either a certain distance or when you're looking up and down. The bushes even seem to look like faces if you look close enough. It can give the atmosphere a sense of unease. Is this even real? What is real? To me, it could show the warped vision of the protagonist, and it could be hinting that they're paranoid, hallucinating, schizophrenic, mentally insane, or, well, all of that. Going back outside, you say, "Something was scratching on the windows last night. I should look for tracks." You can find large tracks similar to a bear's by the side of the shack. These are not normal squirrel tracks. Something out there is hunting me. The creature who made these tracks is a new squirrel introduced into the game, known as squirrel bears. These changed the game a lot. For the first 2 days, you could practically go running around and shooting squirrels for as long as you want. However, if you did that now, you would be dead in minutes. Firstly, they're very sensitive to sound, which is unfortunate considering you're using a gun. If you're being even a little too loud and there's a squirrel bear even remotely in the area, it will come over there instantly. If it manages to spot you, it will start charging at you at rapid speed, like a bear. They're very hard to outrun unless you have an energy drink or just get lucky. If it catches up to you, it will explode, taking about 75% of your health bar. Knowing this, you'll have to be a lot more careful and possibly even change your strategy entirely just so you can survive. If you end up dying, you'll have to redo the day all over again. And hey, you get an achievement. Squirrel bears are killable, however, it takes a total of 3 shots to do so. which is a lot, especially for the time you have before it catches up to you. I would say your best bet is to avoid them and hide. Another issue is the ghost squirrels, since you'll either have to take the damage or take the shot, which risks alerting a squirrel bear. Anyway, back to the radio tower to read more of The Lady. The newly created half-woman screamed and wailed, clawing her ways in circles around the room as blood poured from the bottom of her torso and entrails flopped around in tangles. The artist sobbed and looked to the old woman, who was examining the pennies he'd given her, unfazed. She caught his gaze, shrugged, and said, "I reserve a special spell for these circumstances." He pointed to an axe mounted on the wall. This half-woman reminds me a lot about our beloved back in the shack. Looking at her, she seems to be nothing but a torso and some thighs. She's missing her head and her arms, kind of. If the half-woman from the story was only the waist up, this could make sense. Back to the bunker to read the first report. There's something in the woods here that we didn't expect. I keep finding tracks, and I hear it at night, moving through the foliage and scratching on the concrete. And in the morning there are squirrels outside the door, with their limbs all pulled off and their heads twisted around. Dozens of them, requesting a call for instructions on how to proceed. You could say that what's causing this could be the squirrel bears. However, I don't think they'd be doing all of this, and the shape of the tracks would make it obvious. Back home, your wife is now sitting on the table. You staple the squirrels to her anyway and go to bed. In this way the squirrel is good, while the lobster is bad. Wherefore the squirrels may live, so that squirrels may live, just as lobsters live, so that lobsters may die. On day 4, nothing has changed. There's no new squirrels, you have to collect the same amount. There's still squirrel bears and ghost squirrels around the area. The only thing that does change are the squirrel facts, which is something I haven't even mentioned yet. Since day 1, there would always be notes scattered around the area that would contain squirrel facts that would either be possibly true, obviously not true, or interesting, to say the least. However, now that we're in the late game, they start to get a little ominous. A few examples would be the ones that say things like, squirrels are always watching, squirrels are capable of hating you, and squirrels can debone a human male in under 3 hours. It might also be worth noting that a lot of the squirrel facts are actually lobster fact, which goes back to the note in the shack where they talk about lobsters. Back to the radio tower. The artist lifted the axe, tears streaming down his face. The half-woman continued to scream and claw. He brought the axe down. Her left arm rolled across the floor, and she still screamed and writhed. He brought it down again, separating her skull into 2 parts, and somehow still she screamed. Again, the axe came down, and again, until she screamed no more. Return tomorrow for part 5. I will wait until day 5 to speak on this. At some point during day 4, you will turn around and your wife will have appeared. Once she is there though, she won't try to attack you or anything really, just stand there. Back to the bunker. It's in the walls now, in the concrete, looking for my brain. It can't find it because my brain is inside my skull, but it will. It will peel away skin and bone to get inside. When my brain is taken, I will come for you. I will break you open. I will take yours instead. I'm in the shadows now. I'm seeing you cower. You are already stretched apart into pieces. Your head is already twisted off the spine. Come back tomorrow for another report. This I'll also wait until day 5 to speak about. Once you have enough squirrels for the day, you go home, staple them to your wife, and head to bed. Pretty normal day, at least for this game. God is coming tomorrow. And I say unto you, in those final days the groves will bend in agonized worship, the nutless man will be judged with his own industrial penetration and godless adhesion, so the stapler will become the stapled. Hunting is still the same, however the squirrel facts have become even more ominous. The first one you might see is one saying, there are more squirrels than you have bullets, and you have made her very, very angry. This her could be the god that is coming in 5 days, and also who's been trying to kill you through sending squirrel enemies and through the Stonehenge. Something I haven't seen anyone point out, and might just be me. If you listen long enough to the sounds of the forest, you may eventually hear a whispering voice saying, go back. If this is an actual part of the game and not just me imagining things, then it could be this god telling us to go back while we have the chance. Now, Let's finish reading the note. The artist's ears rang as he turned to the old woman and said, "What is this unspeakable horror you have brought to me? How can I ever escape what has been done here? What penny spell can you cast to conjure good from this?" And the old woman examined the bloody mess and said, "Well, young man, this will make a mighty fine stew." And so they made a stew from the remains. But it was poison, and they both died. Art will eventually destroy the artist. The end. Please disregard previous reports. Everything is quiet. I apologize for keeping you so long. I will tell you about my thoughts about these notes, but let's just finish the game first. Once you've collected all the squirrels needed, a 2-minute timer will appear at the top of your screen, with the words, "God is coming. I must prepare to meet God." If you try to go home, you'll see the words, "I must meet God." So there's nowhere to go. Once the timer gets to 1 minute, you'll begin to hear a chant saying, "God is coming." It gets more and more intense until the timer ends. Once the timer comes to a 0, the chant will now say, "God is here," and you can hear some yell that is supposedly God. Eventually, you'll turn around and see God, but only for a moment before the game cuts away. You win, I guess. Taking a close look at this God, you might notice that its texture and shape seems like two squirrel heads mirrored together into each other. This might be what we see when we commit sins at the Shady Shack. The image could signify that God is watching. So, what happened? Is this the end? What about the story with the lady? What about the reports? I'm finally going to get to all these, but before I do, I want to point out that this is my opinion on the story. The Painted Lady story could act as a metaphor for the character and his beloved, as the protagonist was actually the one who killed her and is trying to rationalize this by pretending she's still alive. The murder near the end of the story could represent the murder committed by the protagonist to his beloved. Him wanting to make her beautiful could also tie into this, as him stapling squirrels to his wife could be some kind of twisted art piece. It's very clear that the protagonist has gone insane, and is most likely a psychopath. We don't know exactly what could have caused this, but we can see signs of his insanity all over. For example, the trees turning into billboards in some sort of warped vision, and the darkness unfolding through our shack, which is very empty and dirty. A theory I've seen online is that the protagonist may have been eating the squirrels as a way to survive, which causes him to hallucinate. If this were the case, he likely would have been eating the giant squirrels, since we never stapled them to our beloved. We know in the end of the lady story we eat the squirrels and die due to poison. We also know that some of the squirrels you collect were killed by poison, so they could be connected. As the days pass, they could be going more and more insane. In fact, they could be the one writing the reports in the bunker. Relating to the reports, this thing they speak of leaving dead squirrels could either be a squirrel bear, a squirrel god as a threat, or the protagonist himself. Speaking of the squirrel god, is it even real, or is it just a hallucination? I think this is all up to you, as it could be either. Personally, I like that a lot. It really gives into the feeling of what's real and what isn't. It can really make you question everything around you, which helps put you into the shoes of the protagonist. I'm sorry this isn't some big reveal at the end. What happened is really up to you, and I like that. In conclusion, Squirrel Stapler is a weird game with a dark story inside, and I would highly recommend you play it. It only takes about an hour, but it's really quite interesting. I also highly recommend you check out other games by David Szymanski. He is honestly one of my favorite developers, and he's made some really great games. This video took a while to make, especially with school and everything, so if you did enjoy, feel free to subscribe, leave a like, all that stuff. I'd also appreciate it if you gave me some feedback in the comments, as I aim to improve. Thanks so much for watching, and goodbye.